Hello and welcome. Today we'll be continuing our Mafioso playthrough of Fallout New Vegas. Today we'll be completing the Honest Hearts and Dead Money DLC using the same rules we used to complete the main game. After saying goodbye to Boone and making sure we were under 75 increments of weight, whatever you want to call it in Fallout, we spoke to Jed Masterson and begun the Honest Hearts DLC.
The paths we're following are slow going, so you might as well keep your ears open and listen to what old Jed has to say. A few decades back, folks in the NCR started to hear about a community in northern Utah called New Canaan. Didn't know much about them, except that they were religious folks, sent out missionaries to talk to the tribes. We've seen our share of cults, but the New Canaanites, they were honest traders. Good fighters, too. Raiders wouldn't tangle with them. But then, the Legion appeared in Arizona. I reckon you know all about them. Turns out Caesar's first war chief, the Malpace Legate, was a New Canaanite, Joshua Graham. Legend goes that Graham was the meanest, toughest son of a bitch in the whole damn Legion. The New Canaanites wouldn't talk about him. They were ashamed. Guess I can't blame him. Well, at Hoover Dam, the Malpace Legate finally met his match. Hanlon and Oliver kicked his New Canaanite butt right back over the river. Caesar had to make an example for the others, to show them that even at the highest level, failure wouldn't be tolerated. He had Graham covered in pitch, lit on fire, and thrown into the Grand Canyon. People say he didn't even scream on the way down. Not long after, some of the slaves and tribals started to talk. Said Graham wasn't dead. Shouldn't have been any surprise. All this talk bothered Caesar, so he forbade anyone from speaking his name. Wanted to erase Joshua Graham from history. He got his wish. Joshua Graham disappeared, and in his place came legends of the burned man walking the wastes. Probably just a tribal ghost story. But New Canaan's been silent for a long time. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe the Malpace Legate is dead. Or maybe Joshua Graham did crawl out of that canyon and finally found his way back home.
Honest Hearts allows us to bring some of our weapons with us from the main game, making the DLC a lot easier than Dead Money. Upon arriving in Zion, we soon got ambushed by tribals. For being tribals, a lot of them had an affinity for either high caliber rifles or automatic weaponry, making them very difficult to beat with no armor. The legendary 357 Magnum revolver lucky was still doing good damage, but was not accurate or fast enough to deal with their automatic weapons. I ended up using the submachine gun Sleepy Time to deal with large groups of enemies, or the sawn-off shotgun Big Boomer to deal with heavily armoured enemies, using slugs of course. After defeating the tribals, I spoke with Follows Chalk, who told me there was someone waiting to meet me. I accepted the Bighorn quest off of him as well, and added that to the list. We ran into our first Yaguai of the run. There are a lot of these in this DLC, and they are very tough. After arriving to the Dead Horse camp, I insulted them using the Sneering Imperialist perk just because I had it. I spoke with the burned man himself at the Dead Horse camp and agreed to help him.
Even Gentiles. But we can't expect God to do all the work.
I picked up a 45 auto pistol from his inventory. Upon exploring Zion, I found that the wildlife was pretty susceptible to just a normal shotgun blast. Didn't need slugs or special rounds. The Yaguai was a different story. You can run into them in a lot of different locations, sort of as like a random encounter. They're not always going to be there. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. There's usually at least 2 of them, and they're pretty tough. We picked up the 45 auto submachine gun, now looking like a true mafioso, with the Chicago typewriter.
Hand me that chopper.
Hey, what line of work you in, George?
Come and get me, Captain, you flatfoot!
There are also these giant cazadors which you will frequently run into in Zion. Same as a normal cazador, a bit higher DPS and a bit more health. Other than that, they're the same. Upon reaching level 22, I picked up the light step perk, so if you notice me walking over mines and then not exploding, that's why. I then started collecting the equipment that Joshua Graham needed. After finding the equipment, I returned to the Dead Horse camp to find the baby bighorner and returned it to its mother. Spoke with Follows Chalk, then Joshua Graham, and then Follows Chalk again about Follows Chalk leaving Zion.
Really? He said
I
that?
ended up deciding to convince him to leave Zion, and then brung the equipment I had been collecting to Daniel, where he told me his plan, and then Joshua Graham discouraged his plan, favouring his own. Daniel wanted the Sorrows to leave Zion, where Graham wanted them to fight back against the Whitelegs. I decided to convince the Sorrows to leave, not for any particular reason, it's just what I did. I ran into more Yaoguais and ended up getting glitched in vats on a rock, which almost killed me. It eventually got unstuck and I switched to Big Boomer to finish the Yaoguai off. I went to the cave and found the terminal with the map to the grand staircase on it for Daniel, blew up the Yaoguai cave, and then stole the totems from the White Leg camps. While I was in Zion, I picked up the snow globe for Mr. House, returned to Daniel to tell him I was ready, and then set out with Joshua Graham to rescue as many Sorrows as I could. Once I had finished rescuing all of the Sorrows, I then convinced Salt Upon Wounds to stand down, saying that he could build up his tribe and attack again later.
I go, but rebuild my tribe.
All in a day's labor serving.
After I finished dealing with Salt Upon Wounds, I spoke to Daniel, went through the tunnel, and collapsed it so we could not be followed. And thus we completed Honest Hearts as a mafioso.
And so it was that the conflict between the New Canaanites and the Whitelegs was finally resolved. The courier's involvement had tipped the scale, shifting the fragile balance of power.
After the Whitelegs drove the Sorrows from Zion, they celebrated by destroying all traces of the valley's former inhabitants. They appealed to the Legion for assimilation, but were denied. Their failure to eradicate the New Canaanites in Grand Staircase and farther up the Colorado had not gone unnoticed. The Whitelegs made a half-hearted effort to find the New Canaanites, but were driven off by dead horses trained in the ways of Joshua Graham. The Whitelegs lost all hope of joining the Legion and disintegrated into a number of petty raiding bands, leaving Zion Valley a polluted cistern.
Daniel succeeded in leading the Sorrows out of Zion, as he had wanted to do from the start. The courier protected the Sorrows during the evacuation, ensuring that most reached their destination unharmed. Over the weeks and months to come, Daniel would see to the Sorrows' resettlement in Grand Staircase. Their adjustment to their new home was not without difficulty, but eventually, the Sorrows came to accept the loss of Zion.
Having helped Daniel and the Sorrows escape from Zion, the Dead Horses returned to their home at Dead Horse Point. The tribe continued to learn from the New Canaanites, and over many years built a flourishing community along the banks of the Colorado. Though the tribe's bond would endure, it was Joshua Graham's legend the Dead Horses would revere, not the tenets of New Canaan's faith.
Already weakened by several seasons of bad trading, the Happy Trails Caravan Company was initially discouraged by the results of its expedition, the fate of New Canaan, and the evacuation of the Sorrows from Zion made the prospect of trading seem fruitless. When Daniel told his family about the exploits of Happy Trails employee the courier, however, New Canaan decided to repay the company's kindness. Twice per year, New Canaanites made the dangerous journey west to trade with a company in the city of New Reno. The Happy Trails Caravan Company could not survive on such trading alone, but the New Canaanites' generosity made tough times go easier.
Follows Chuck took the courier's words to heart and decided that he would behold the sights and sounds of distant lands with his own eyes and ears. After returning to Dead Horse Point, he quarreled with his family and other tribe members about his ambitions. One morning, they awoke to discover that Follows Chuck had set off alone, westward, into the wilderness. He was never seen again.
After leading the Sorrows from their home in Zion to safety in Grand Staircase, Daniel continued to wonder if he'd made the right choice. He spent his life evangelizing the beliefs of his people to a new generation of young men and women, as his ancestors had for centuries before him. He was happy with his family, but for the rest of his life, there were nights when he awoke with sadness to find he had been dreaming of Zion.
And with that, the courier walked out of the history of the tribes of Zion and back to the gathering storm of the Mojave Wasteland.
After finishing the DLC, we acquired a Light Shining in Darkness, a unique 45 automatic pistol. It's Joshua Graham's pistol, to be specific, and Daniel's hat, which we swapped for Vance's lucky hat. And we headed to the Sierra Madre, which was a lot more difficult because we only had access to one weapon. And not only is that weapon not very good, it doesn't have the highest spawn chance in the Sierra Madre. And I didn't end up finding it until the DLC was almost finished.
But for all who
So I do not have a lot of footage for this DLC, as a lot of it was just me running around looking for a gun.
Except the Sierra Madre never opened. The war froze it in time, like a big flashbulb going off. The grand opening, one big ending of humanity. It's still out there, in the wastes, preserved, just waiting for someone to crack it open. But getting to it, that's not the hard part.
After that lovely fever dream we have of the Sierra Madre, we wake up in the Sierra Madre with a bomb collar around the necks and an old man giving us orders. He tells us to go and find other people with bomb collars around their neck and convince them to join our cause. I went and acquired Dean Domino as our follower first, because he's playing with the same rules we are, only using a 9mm pistol and wearing a suit.
And that's what I've missed.
After that, I went and got Christine from the hospital because I wanted the Stimpak recipe. I ended up dealing with most of the hologram people the same way by turning off the emitter.
Cloud was always here.
I went and retrieved God Dog out of the cage.
I'm the voice.
Usually I convince God to come out of his own volition, but I got sick of talking with him and just decided to get Dog out and told him where the key was. And it was just before this point where I finally found my 9mm pistol. It was near where God Dog triggers the Gala event. After entering the Sierra Madre Casino, we began dealing with our constituents we gathered along the way. killing Dean Domino. I also merged the two halves of God's consciousness so he was now one person instead of two people, and spoke to Christine, who unlike Dean Domino didn't try to kill me instantly. I forgot to record it, specifically because I wasn't doing a lot of recording for this DLC, because I didn't have a gun for most of it, but I killed Father Elijah in the vault, using the 9mm pistol and almost all the bullets we had acquired. That's all for this video today. If you enjoyed, please like. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe.
In the end,
Without further
the call
ado,
of
I'll
silence
leave
made
you
them
with the ending we
uneasy,
got for this
and
playthrough.
the fear of turning on each other made them hesitate and leave the goodbyes unspoken. The radio message at the fountain was enough for them, and there was no need to add another farewell on top of all they had suffered.
Dog forgot himself, as did the voice that raged within him. After their passing, a new voice spoke within the mutant shell. It was difficult for the voice to remember the two it once was. There was the beast, Dog, consumed by hunger. And the other in reverse, the one consumed by control. Both were driven by need for the other. The courier brought them together somehow, joined the two into one. All that happened at the Sierra Madre was a faint memory to the new personality, like a flickering light in the clouds of the mind. The new voice did not think of the courier again until the battle at the Divide reached his ears. The battle between the two couriers, beneath the torn skies and the old world flag, each bearing a message for the other. And the mutant prayed the courier that had saved him had been saved in return.
Dean Domino, entertainer, singer, thief, had his last show on the Sierra Madre stage. The heist he spent over 200 years planning fell apart, just as the first, by underestimating his partner's strength. Not long after the courier left the villa, the lights in the theater shut off, one by one. Only Dean's hologram remained on the stage, singing silently to an empty room. Still, as consumed as he had been with its riches and ruin, the Sierra Madre had held him captive long ago.
Christine, her mission complete, found new purpose as the Sierra Madre's warden. She watched over it silently, by choice. Over time, the ghost people came to see her as one of the holograms. They would watch, silently, as she walked among them. At times, Christine thought of the courier, who had kept Elijah's hand from her throat. The courier reminded her of the other courier she had met in the Big Empty, and wondered if the two had found each other at last. She did not think of them again until she heard the legends of the Divide. The Divide, where the two messengers, the two couriers, fought beneath an ancient flag, at the edge of the world.
You've heard of the Sierra Madre Casino. We all have. The legend, the curses. Some foolishness about it lying in the middle of a city of dead. A city of ghosts, buried beneath a blood-red cloud. A bright, shining monument luring treasure hunters.
Special thanks to those who made it this far in the video. I will be completing the other two DLCs under the same rules. Thanks for watching the whole video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thanks and goodbye.
That's not the hard part.